We've had fire activity there ever since we've been here, and I think probably for the past week or so. We've been checking that activity by air, primarily bucket work from helicopters. With the winds today, we weren't able to take any checking action, but on the other hand, the wind really didn't hurt us. There was some smoke coming up there, a little bit of fire movement, but no significant movement. And the key is the fire did not make it down to the bottom of the drainage, nor get across this line that you see, which is essentially a prepared road. So fire is still where we want it, within the box we want to keep it in, and all is good at this point on Williams Fork. Moving over to East Troublesome, again, a very good day for the firefighter and for the community on the Grand Zone. I'll talk briefly about the Thompson Zone as well, but specific to the Grand Zone, starting over here on the west, good containment maintained all the way across the western flank of the fire, where we have dozer, hand line, roads connected, that sort of thing. Same sort of thing, we don't show black along this edge, but what's gone on here is there's some line prepared in some places. There's what we call cold trail, i.e. down in the lighter grass and sage fuels, where the fire has basically gone out and the crews have gone through, frequently using their hands, just to confirm that that's a cold black edge. There's a lot of that type of sort of thing coming across, and there are some areas in some of these drainages where there's a little bit of fire spread continuing, but not a problem. So overall, this edge looks very good all the way back down until we get fairly close to Highway 40. There was one spot fire that showed up along Highway 40 this afternoon. Crews got on that rapidly. That was turned in, and people were able to respond quickly. Both engine hand crews and helicopter were able to work on that. So that was a good thing. Coming all the way across the rest of the southern side of the fire above Granby, no issues with the fire edge there. All that held well today throughout the wind event. Same sort of thing coming north up toward Willow Creek Reservoir and Table Mountain, no issues reported. Moving on up, and particularly around the structures all the way up to Grand Lake, crews and particularly the structure engines were working throughout the neighborhoods, the subdivisions, amongst the residents, providing structure protection. There was a question about what does structure and point protection mean. Crews are going in, putting out any fire close to the structures, making sure that there's no potential for fire to spread into or around structures, taking the opportunity to connect cold black to cold black, put that fire edge out where they can. So mopping up where things continue to smolder after the fire has burned through that might pose a risk to structures. So that's the sort of thing that the crews are really working on all the way across this piece of ground. That's going to take a while. That will continue, and I'll talk about the weather we're anticipating tonight and what that means for us. But that will continue for a number of days to ensure we have that area in a safe condition, so that we don't lose additional structures and it's safe to be back in that area. Our objective obviously is to get the community and the residents back into their homes. Continuing on up around Grand Lake, yesterday we had a burn operation to cut off any fire spread from trying to come around and kind of come in the backside of the Grand Lake community. That burn went very well. Today we're continuing to mop that up, making sure that doesn't pose any additional threat to the community of Grand Lake. That operation proceeded well. Moving on up to the north, on up Highway 34, crews worked along the edge. You can see this odd looking finger. Fire has actually just spread up parallel to the road system, and the road system is essentially checking most of the easterly spread. A couple areas it's come across, and then there's a road right about here that has come to and stopped, and so crews are working along that to provide protection to some improvements there, and then they also got out ahead to prep some of these facilities that are further on up the road in the national park, in case we saw a significant fire spread off this uncontained northern edge of the fire. So there was quite a bit of effort focused there. Coming around the north side of East Troublesome, we did not have anything staffed. We did have our air attack up, keeping an eye on that throughout the day. There was some movement around with the winds in the timbered fuels. but I won't say any significant movement. Nothing unexpected, and nothing that caused any concerns in this area or concerns further north as we get back up closer to private ground. Kind of wrapping on around into where I started on the west side again. That was the flank of the fire. Winds were on this throughout the day. No significant spread of concern. I did want to mention, obviously, so we've talked from the crest west is the Grand Zone. From the crest to the east is the Thompson Zone. That this portion of the fire, and this map isn't quite up to date, has grown significantly throughout the day and is threatening the Estes Park area. The Cameron Peak team, Rocky Mountain Team 1, has been working this fire. They're actively engaged in a very aggressive firefight right now, about right here, to check fire spread that's trying to get down into Estes Park. So they've had a very long day, a very tough day. Last report, I did talk to their IC. They were just starting to get a little bit of precip on the fire with the front coming through, so that's great news. And they had just completed a burnout. There are really two fingers. They just completed a burnout on the northern finger successfully, so they were happy with that. But they're not out of the woods by any means. A lot of active fire spread there, with the community certainly still at risk. So this was the most active fire portion of East Troublesome today, particularly as it related to values at risk today. Let's see, acreage-wise for both sides, as of noon, we're up around 191,000 acres or so. Up 15,000 acres or so from yesterday. 10,000 acres from yesterday. I think we grew about 15 acres over on Williams Fork. I'll stop there, I think, and turn it over to your sheriff. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Brett Trotland, Grand County Sheriff. Once again, the question remains on reentry. We're receiving multiple inquiries about that, and I want you to let you know that our staff is working very hard on figuring out the exact plans for that. Those plans are very complicated. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in that process, but the number one thing it comes down to is we still have active fire on the west side of Highway 34. We have active fire surrounding the town of Grand Lake, and little hot spots that are popping up all over the place. And so until we can actually get this fire to the point where we feel safe for reentry, that's our number one goal. Is we need to continue working to protect those structures that haven't been lost, continue to protect those areas in there, and it's time intensive. It takes time for that to happen. It takes time for that to be secured, and really this weather hopefully is going to help us. But until that case, we can't make any decisions on reentry. Now what I can tell you is there are tons of plans in place that we're working on to work on that reentry process. Those are ongoing, constant meetings, constant decisions between fire departments, EMS, sheriff's office, police departments, utility providers, the state. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in those decisions, and we're making those decisions, coming up with the very best plan. The big thing is winterization. A lot of people are talking to us about winterization. This is a little different fire season because we're fighting fire now, and we're going to have critical weather day today, or red flag day today, and then weather change tonight. And so there's a lot of new things that are coming with this fire. Obviously, a few days ago, 100,000 acres growth has brought a whole new world of challenges, and this is just another one of those challenges. And so rest assured that we are working towards that process. One other misconception I want to reiterate on here is that the town of Granby is it's not under evacuation status. There was a very few amount of homes on the north side of Granby that were placed into evacuation status, more to those rural outlying areas. But the town itself remains in pre-evacuation status, not evacuation status. So I think that's super important. So going back to basically reentry and repopulation process, a gentleman we have here from the state, Mr. Trevor Denny, he's the field services manager from Colorado Office of Emergency Management. He needs to sneak away to another reentry meeting, but I want to make the introduction to him real briefly, and then I'll be back to take questions.
Thank you, Sheriff. As you said, my name is Trevor Denny. I'm with the Colorado Office of Emergency Management. The Sheriff asked me just to kind of spend a couple minutes talking about what the state's emergency management's role has been in the East Troublesome Fire. and maybe what to expect in the upcoming days and weeks. So first and foremost, I'd like to say that we have been standing alongside the county and the community since the beginning of the Williams Fork Fire, now into the East Troublesome Fire. Our primary role has been to this point supporting of the Emergency Operations Center, helping to assist in coordination of state resources in support of evacuation and sheltering and other human needs. But now as we are talking about reentry, we'll begin to shift some focus into some of the things that we'll need to do prior to being able to allow folks in their homes, which are conducting damage assessments. So in the next few days, we'll begin ramping up teams that will be begin planning around damage assessments of impacted communities, evacuated areas. This will be done in conjunction with the Sheriff's Office and the Incident Management Team as we need to ensure that it is safe for us to enter into those areas as there's still active fire as well as weather. After conducting those in coordination with the sheriff and being able to allow residents back into their homes, our state recovery task force will then begin to ramp up and begin to provide resources to homeowners that have lost homes or other needs that they may have. So that's what we'll be working on over the next few days and weeks. But the most important thing is to stay connected to the county's information sites. So please stay tuned to those as you can, as that will be the most reliable and up-to-date information that you can get. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff. Sheriff, we have a few questions for you. Can you address the decision to shut off power on Sunday to all houses that have wells?
So that decision is made through the power company. If the IC has anything he wants to add to that, I can let him add to that. But basically, that's a safety mechanism in place as our crews are in there working in the area, just to make sure that we don't have additional fire spread or things like that. So maybe I'll let him touch on that. But
Okay. Why don't we go to these next two and then we'll have Noel come up. Will turning off power prevent thermostats from working and keeping pipes from freezing? Maybe that should be addressed to an engineer. I don't know. But
yeah, that's not going to be a good sheriff question for me, but I'm sure we can find someone that can answer that.
And finally, are calls starting to be made to owners on assessed structures in the evacuated areas?
So that's a really good question that I can answer. So at this point, there is not. As we mentioned, there's still a lot of active fire in there. We've moved crews around throughout the day trying to get in there and figure out which structures are actually damaged and which are not. That is a very detailed process, as we mentioned before. We want to make sure that we're providing correct information as far as which properties are actually damaged and which are not. I do have some good information to share that I think is important, is that the fire impact is on the west side of Highway 34. And at this point in time, there are no known structures on the east side of Highway 34 that are damaged, except about 6 or 7 miles up, there's a couple in there. But as far as moving basically from mile marker 8 up to the Grand Lake area on the east side of the road, that entire section up in there by the South Firehouse and stuff has all been ruled out. So hopefully that can put at least some of you at ease when we kind of redefine some of these areas.
One more, Sheriff. Can you address evacuee reentry process from let me state that again. Can you address evacuee reentry process form on the Grand County Emergency Management site?
Sure. So we created a form on that website that basically documents your information so that we do have that information to contact you. So if you do believe that your home is within that burn area, especially the west side of Highway 34, working your way up towards the National Park, I'd recommend that you go onto that gcemergency.com website. And on that website, you click on the evacuation form. That documents your information for us and actually allows us a little better information to contact you when the time is right.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Noel, have a few more questions for you as well. We'll go to that question about turning off the power.
You bet. So anytime on wildland or structure fire, one of the greatest hazards to firefighters are some of the utilities, whether that's a gas line or a power line. When we have that wildland fire coming into that situation, we want to de-energize those lines. Obviously, power poles can burn. Lines can come down and be energized, which prevent crews from moving in or out, as well as obviously pose a risk to crews. And then certainly if there's a structure fire, you want to get the fire off to the house before crews either make entry or even work on the exterior of a house. So that's the reason for de-energizing the system. In this case, of course, it was a broad, looking at the map, a broad area that was at risk with fire down into the community, and so it was necessary to de-energize a large area. Now certainly once that's, and again I'm not with the utility company, but once that's happened and you've had the damage to the infrastructure, power poles being down, power lines being down, then it takes a while to be able to re-energize that system, and certainly you don't want to re-energize a damaged system, because now you have live power lines again back down on the ground that are a risk to the firefighter. So you've got to allow the utility companies to work through there, ensure their system is back up and running before you can turn the power back on.
No, it was very, very windy today again. Were aircraft used?
Good question, and I'm sorry I missed that one earlier. We tried early this morning and were unable to fly aircraft. We did fly one aircraft out onto the Williams Fork spot fire that I talked about earlier. The pilot got out there and just could not safely do bucket work, so we had to bring that ship back and land. Now about midday, wind let up a little bit, and we did use aircraft along Highway 40, that spot fire that I mentioned. We were able to get aircraft in effectively there. So it was a windy day. That's very tricky for helicopters in particular, particularly when they're down low trying to drop water. You think about the gusts and whatnot that you feel when you're on the ground. That pilot is trying to deal with that same thing 100, 200 feet up in the air. And it's a risky business, but we were able to fly a little bit this afternoon. Retardant was not an option, nor was it needed today for the fire activity that we saw.
Well, stick with the weather-related question. How will the snow affect our firefighting efforts and/or the fire?
Gotcha. Again, tonight is a winter storm warning, so we are hoping, fingers crossed, that we get significant snow tonight. The snow will certainly bring up the humidities, dampen any fire spread. We don't expect tomorrow to be a situation where we would see any significant fire movement. In addition, that's moisture that's available to the fuels. Those fuels can start absorbing some of that moisture out of the snow, which removes them from being available for combustion. That's essentially what happens after a rainstorm or a snowstorm. In terms of our operations for tomorrow, it may hamper some of our ability to move some of our structure engines around, just because they're not really equipped sometimes, it depends on the vehicle, to access some areas. In other areas where access is good, we'll certainly have those resources in around and continuing to mop up. When you get moisture, whether it's snow or rain or anything else, in this case it'll be snow, that's a great opportunity for crews to use that moisture and mix it in and put out those heat sources that are around a house or along the edge of a containment line to reinforce those containment lines. So to the degree we can, we'll take advantage of that. Given that it's snow, there may be some safety elements that we have to take into account. Rain we love. Snow is good, but it may impact just driving, obviously. So we're gonna have to be careful there. What you'll see tomorrow morning, if there's significant snow, is we will lead out with our leadership. We'll get out into areas and make sure that we've got the right resource in the right place to engage tomorrow to get the work done and get it done safely. So overall, snow's a great thing. We've been hoping for it. I hope we get a lot of it, and we'll take advantage of that tomorrow.
Is the fire threatening Highway 40?
There is still some threat to Highway 40. We talked about this area down here where the fire is up on the hill and the light fuels, and there is still some active fire edge up there. The snow that we just talked about in those lighter fuels is really going to be a significant event in that it's basically going to put that out. The snow will not put out heavy fuels, logs, larger limbs, that sort of thing is not going to go out with snow unless we get a lot more snow. But it will put out grass, it will put out sage, that sort of thing. So that is really going to check any hazard to Highway 40, particularly for tomorrow. I think that's going to take that corner of this fire out of play entirely. Up in the timbered areas, the snow is not going to put the fire out, but it is really going to put it on pause. And we anticipate really taking advantage of that pause to get this condition where your homes are in a place where we can start talking about reentry, as the sheriff addressed earlier.
Can you talk about the lines being laid down around Grand Lake? I'm assuming those are fire lines, and what's going on with that?
So around Grand Lake itself, as I mentioned, we did a burnout around particularly the east side of the lake, and there is a fire line that we burned off there. Throughout these communities, some of these we're using roads, in some places we're connecting road to road, in some places we're connecting cold black to cold black. As you know, as we got closer to Grand Lake, there are areas where there's more of a meadow vegetation and whatnot that extends out to the west. And the fire burned more in a spotty manner there, so we've connected where fire has gone out in those meadow areas, through the timber to the next meadow, that sort of thing. So it's a mix. You won't see one continuous straight fire line around that area. It really does weave in and out of the community and in and out of the houses as we piece that together.
And forgive my pronunciation. Will the fire cause Bethard Pass to be shut down? I'm not sure if I pronounced that right.
Sheriff, can you help me with that one?
You got it. You mean just take it? The answer is no.
The answer is no, it will not.
All right, good quick answer there. Is natural gas on in Grand Lake?
The natural gas company is working on valves and repairs necessary to get natural gas on. At this point, for my information, and this is actually a sheriff's question, but it's not at this point.
It's not on, but I saw multiple trucks up there today working.
Okay, I kind of stole the sheriff's answer there, but multiple trucks working today. I know they're working on, along with the other infrastructure, trying to get that back in place.
Again, another question about power, where it's on or off, and when will that happen? Basically, probably want to know when they will go back on.
So you want to take that one?
Sure. All right, you have me again for the next question. So there's basically three different infrastructure items that we at least need to have, which is obviously the Excel, the Mountain Parks Electric, and then water and sanitation. And so all of those different municipalities or special districts are working in these areas to try to get things up and running. And so they've been active in the field today. I haven't heard any updates since this morning, but they are continuing to try to review their infrastructure. Like I said, review power lines. I talked to the water district today, and they were trying to figure out some of their pump stations and things like that. And so each of those municipalities or special districts will report back to us when they have some findings. And so we're just waiting to hear back on those. All right, thank you.
Thank you. No, just a couple more questions. You talked about cold black. What does that mean?
Okay, yep, sorry to use firefighter vernacular there. What we're talking about, when a fire moves through and burns the surface fuels, you end up obviously with charcoal on the ground and a black edge. When that edge is cold, and frequently that's in a grass fuel, but it could be in timber litter, but when that's cold, i.e. there's no more heat in it, that's just referring to cold black. So when I say we were connecting fire from cold black to cold black, basically meant we had an area of fire that was burning around between two other areas that had essentially gone out. And so we would just connect that area that had gone out with a line across the fire edge to the next area that had gone out. And for the area that had gone out, doesn't need a line, it's not burning, and it can't reignite. So that's what I meant by cold black. Sorry about that. Good question.
What is the current containment percentage?
About 4 to 5%. Now that number is going to go up significantly tomorrow, particularly as we get weather and look at what's the condition of this fire across really the southern flanks of the fire and these finer fuels. I anticipate that containment to go up significantly tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. We will not show containment in the near term around the entire north side of the fire through the park. I anticipate containment to come up fairly quickly also in the Grand Lake area, but certainly on this southern portion, we'll see a big jump in the numbers tomorrow afternoon.
I think that's great news. What's happening on the north side of the fire, and what are the impacts up there?
The north side of the fire right now is unstaffed. We have been flying it every day just to evaluate where it is, and we're working out further north to make sure we identify values at risk, particularly private properties or any improvements that may be impacted by the fire. Given the way the fire has moved and the values imminently at risk, which are primarily here and obviously over toward Estes Park, this is where our focus has been given the resources we have available to us. The northern side of the fire is burning on national forest in those timbered stands with that heavy fuel loading of beetle-killed lodgepole pine, and is continuing to consume in those fuels as it chews, as it's pushed to the east, but kind of chews its way north on the flanks. Our primary concern, longer term, then are going to be these improvements in private lands that are further to the north, about the top of the map. Don't know, and I hope the fire doesn't get that far, but that's our next primary value at risk.
And Noel, this is a great question, something that we deal with every day, and this year anyway. How are the firefighters dealing with COVID?
That is a very good question. So, you know, COVID challenges us, and we deal with that every day in our fire organization, in that, we need to keep our fire resources healthy, both for personal reasons, just so that we care for our people, and then certainly from a workforce perspective, so that we have the resources available to fight these fires. And thirdly, we bring a lot of people into a community, and we want to make sure we don't bring COVID into a community. So those are things we think about and address with our COVID, what I call our COVID plans and our COVID mitigations. We take that very seriously. So here in camp, as well as out on the line, we have a number of things that we're doing differently this year to address and try to minimize the spread of this virus. Certainly, social distancing, wearing masks, and good sanitation is really the key to that, and we really emphasize that on a daily basis. We're also doing things like this video conferencing, where ordinarily the sheriff and I would be talking to you in a crowded auditorium. And we're not doing that this year for your health as well as for ours. The firefighters get their meals differently this year. They used to stand in a chow line, get their food, go through the salad bar, sit down and eat together. Now they get a box, kind of like you would, you know, a to-go box like you get at Wendy's, and they take that out to their vehicle to eat rather than sit together, to try to minimize that spread of the virus. And thirdly, and we've had a great opportunity on this fire with this YMCA facility, it's priceless in that we've been able to put our firefighters undercover. We've been able to give them showers every evening and a bed to sleep in, and just that additional rest and sanitation has resulted in a significant decrease in just the regular flu and what we call camp crud, respiratory illnesses, and a number of other things. All of those things are COVID mitigations that have been very effective for us this year. So overall, our COVID numbers have been extremely low. We've had some tests out, but the instances of COVID have not been a problem on this incident.
All right, one final question, Noel. What's the status of the investigation of the cause of the fire?
I know that's of concern. Again, I don't have any information on an update on that investigation. Cause is still under investigation. As far as I know, probably human cause, but I have no information on any specifics about that. Forest is conducting that investigation.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sheriff and Trevor, for being here and answering some questions and giving some updates, especially on the disaster relief piece. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, taking time out to do that. We appreciate your time. We'll respond to any other questions that you post on Facebook as we can. And again, please stay tuned to both the fire Facebook feed and the county's Facebook feed and the Sheriff's Department or Sheriff's Office Facebook feed, as well as into it. So thank you, and again, this concludes our meeting for tonight.